Good evening and welcome back, everybody. So in the last lesson we started looking at lists and how we can add things to a list, how we can get things out of a list. In this lesson we're going to start taking a look at loops, primarily the while loop and the do while loop. So let's just get straight to it. So I'm going to leave some of this code here for the time being. So I'm going to leave the declaration of the list, and I'm also going to leave the part where we've added three things to the list. So I'm going to remove this stuff. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write a while loop, and we're just going to print something out while some condition is true. So let's type it out first and then talk through it. So I want to use the keyword while, and then I need to put my condition, similar to an if statement. We need to put something that either returns true or false here. So there's a method on a list called size, and size will return you the number of items in the list. So I'm going to say while my list is less than 5. So basically while there's less than 5 things in the list. At the moment we've got 1, 2, 3 things in the list. So, and in here I'm just going to print out inside the while loop. Now if I run this will never ever finish, because this condition will always be true. My integer list will always be a size of 3. Let's just run it and see. And there we go, we get messages constantly printing out, and that will just keep going forever. So let's stop that. And what we can do is do something inside the loop, which is going to eventually make this condition false. And you've probably already guessed it. So inside here, I'm just going to add something to the list. Doesn't matter what, I'm going to add the number 44. Really doesn't matter. And let's just run that again. So what I'd expect now is to see this message printed twice. Let's run it. Perfect, we get the message twice. And that's because we add 3 things to the list. We check if the list is less than 5. It is. So we do this. At this point then, the list becomes 4. So we do the check again. Is the list less than 5? It's 4, so it is. So we print the message out again. Then when we add the list, then when we add it to a list for the second time, the size of the list becomes 5. So this is no longer true. And that's all a while loop is. It's basically, while some condition is true, execute this bit of code. And as soon as it's false, stop. Simple. Let's have a look at a slightly different type of loop now. I don't tend to use this loop as much as the traditional while loop. So with this sort of loop, we basically kind of write it backwards. We say, do this bit of code while this condition is true. So let's just take the same bit of code, and we'll have the same condition. My integer list dot size is less than 5. And I'm just going to comment this bit out so we don't run this bit. And we need a semicolon. So naturally you'd kind of expect the same thing to happen here, because the condition is exactly the same. But let's just look what happens. So notice in the last example we only had this printed out twice. Let's see what happens now. We get it printed out twice, which is fine. But let's say what happens, let's say I make the list already bigger than 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the list at this point is 6. So I wouldn't expect this to run at all. Or with this previous loop, we don't see any message at all. Let's just double check that. Because this condition is already false. Yeah. Now let's look with the do while loop. So we've got 6 things in our list. This while condition is false. Let's see what happens. We get the message. And this is the important part, this is the important nuance of the do while loop. So in a do while loop, the bit inside the do will always get executed at least once, because this thing happens first and then the while loop is evaluated. So it's going to literally do this and then check this. So you need to be a little bit careful when using the do while loop. That is the actual intended effect that you want to have. And that about wraps it up for while loops and do while loops. In the next lesson we'll start looking at for loops, which I find a bit more fun and a bit more useful. But I hope you found this fun and this useful, and if you have, please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.